The Fireflies' Christmas Gift by Donna M. Nolan-Wilson. This is a Christmas story for children, but the grown-ups can listen too. There was a tiny little town in a tiny little part of the South that was so tiny that it was not on any map. In this tiny little town lived a tiny little girl named Tina. Little Tina was so very small and very, very pretty. She had big brown eyes that twinkled when she smiled. She was a kind and sweet girl, and she loved life in her tiny little town. Tina didn't take anything for granted, you see. Tina lived alone with her mommy. Tina never really knew her daddy. He left home when she was just a baby. Tina and her mommy lived in a little two-room cottage, and her mommy made it as nice and comfortable as it could possibly be. They had none of the things that we're used to having. They didn't have electricity, or running water, or television. They got their water from a well in the yard, but they did have a radio that used batteries, and they enjoyed it whenever there was money for batteries. Tina's mommy could sew some, so she made whatever she could to make the cottage a pretty home. The main room in the cottage had a couch which Tina's mommy had covered in bright pink and blue patterns. Then she made curtains to match. The main room had a sink and a stove and a refrigerator to one side. They had a little white table that had just two chairs in the middle of the room, one for Tina and one for her mommy. The couch was on the other side of the room in front of a cozy stone fireplace. Tina's mommy had made a tablecloth to match the curtains and the couch, so it all looked very pretty. Tina shared a bedroom with her mommy. They each had a bed on either side of the room with a pretty white dresser in the middle. Tina's mommy had made pretty pink matching bedspreads and pretty matching curtains. The cottage was a very nice place to live for a little girl, and Tina loved it there. Tina's mommy worked so hard cleaning other people's houses so they could stay together in their little cottage and have food to eat. Tina's mommy was tired most of the time, but she never complained, and she never told Tina, but Tina knew. She could see it in her mommy's eyes. Tina loved her mommy with all her heart and wished that there was some way she could make life easier for her mommy. Being only 5 years old, there was not much that she could do except to be a good little girl. Christmas was coming, and Tina wished with all her might that she could get her mommy a wonderful Christmas present, something that would show her mommy just how much she loved her. Tina thought and thought and thought about it. She decided she would make her mommy some lovely cards, and she did. One card had a beautiful angel on it, and it said, "Merry Christmas, Mommy. I love you. Love, Tina." The next card said, "For you, Mommy, at Christmas time. Love, Tina." And it had a beautiful star on it that Tina had put some glitter on. Tina hid the cards under her bed, and she would give them to her mommy on Christmas Eve. One night, after prayers, Tina was supposed to be asleep, but she wasn't sleeping. She was laying there thinking about Christmas and wondering what Santa Claus would be bringing her. Tina's mommy had come to bed just then, and she heard her mommy say a tearful prayer. Her mommy prayed, "Dear Lord, please help me find a way to give my precious child a nice Christmas. I don't have hardly any money, hardly enough to buy food, and I don't even think I will be able to get a Christmas tree for my special girl. Please, Lord, help me find a way." Tina's heart was breaking at the sound of her mommy quietly crying, and she knew she would just have to do something. The next day she was out in the yard in the front of the cottage. The cottage was set back in the woods and had tall trees of all kinds surrounding it. Tina sat on a log and looked up at the sky and said her own prayer. "Dear Lord, help me find a way to help my mommy have a good Christmas. Please, Lord, she is the best mommy in the world, and she should have everything she wants." The next day and the next, Tina said the same prayer while sitting on the log looking up to the sky. What Tina didn't know was that there was a firefly sitting on a tree nearby listening to her prayers. That past summer, Tina had caught a firefly and kept it in her room for a few days. Then she noticed that the firefly was looking sad, so she had to set it free. The firefly's name was Danny. Being December, most fireflies don't come out in the chill. They stay close to home. But Danny had been outside getting some fresh air and heard Tina's prayers and remembered the little girl from the summer before, so she listened for her the next day and the next. She really liked this little girl and knew her to be a kind soul and wished there was something she could do to help. She called a meeting with all the other fireflies late that third night and told them all about Tina. All the other fireflies wanted to do something to help the sweet little girl and her mother. But what could they do? They were only little bugs that had light-up tails. They vowed that they were to stay up all night to try and figure this out. After all, the very next day was Christmas Eve, so they didn't have much time. Danny came up with an idea and a plan, but it was going to take a little bit more help from some other friends of theirs. Tina and her mommy put up Christmas decorations that they had from the years before and some new ones that they had made. Tina's mommy had gotten paid, so she was going to make a big fine ham for the Christmas dinner. Tina's mommy was able to buy her a store-bought doll, but that was all she could afford from her earnings. She was sad that there would not be a tree this year, but they would have to make do. It was Christmas Eve, and Tina and her mommy were going to Mass in town. It was a little chilly, so they bundled up and headed off down the dirt path and out onto the road that led into town. Danny watched them leave, and as soon as they made their way onto the road, Danny whistled for everyone to come. They had lots of work to do and not a lot of time to do it. Danny gave the orders and everyone started working. The termites started chewing, the moths started spinning. There was even some birds that came to help. It was going wonderfully and quickly, and Danny did believe that they were going to have it all done in time for Tina and her mommy's arrival home. It had gotten dark outside when Tina and her mommy were headed down the dirt path back to the cottage. From the path they could see the glow of the fireplace. Tina's mommy wondered who could be in the cottage, so they walked up very slowly. Tina's mommy was holding Tina's hand tightly as they tiptoed up to the front door. They pressed their ears against the door, but they did not hear a thing. They slowly opened the door, and they were amazed at what they saw. In the middle of the room stood the most beautiful Christmas tree they had ever seen. It was 6 feet tall and had beautiful decorations on it. It was all lit up and twinkling, beautiful white twinkles. It took their breath away. They looked at each other and they ran over to the tree. Tina's mommy asked, "Who could have done this?" Tina shrugged her shoulders and said, "I don't know, Mommy." They noticed there were 2 beautiful dresses, one hanging over each other. Holding them up to their faces, they felt how soft they were, and Tina's mommy knew they were made of silk. They both laughed and they both cried. Tina's mommy thanked the Lord for her answered prayers, and Tina told her mommy that she had been praying to the Lord every day too. They put on their beautiful dresses and sat down to eat the wonderful ham that Tina's mommy had baked, and they sang Christmas songs in between the mouthfuls of ham. This was a wonderful Christmas, a glorious Christmas, the best Christmas ever. Still, Tina wondered how the Christmas tree got in the cottage. Who brought it there? She wandered over to the tree and looked at all the brilliant lights, and then noticed that one of the lights was looking back at her. She looked even closer, and she realized that this was not a Christmas light, but a firefly. In fact, it looked just like the firefly that she had caught last summer and kept in a mayonnaise jar for a couple of days and then let free. Could it be? Could this really be a tree lit up by fireflies? Tina leaned a little closer, and what do you think she saw? The little light winked at her. Merry Christmas, everyone.